Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today's session at the Local Infrastructure Hub. My name is Jamie Lavin, and I'm on the Government Innovation Team at Bloomberg Philanthropies. And I'm so excited for today's conversation about the Safe Streets and Roads for All program and how we can make communities around our country safer for pedestrians and cyclists and all of your residents. Today, we're going to be digging in to hear from the Department of Transportation and to hear from other cities who have been successfully applying for Safe Streets and Roads for All funding. And they're going to tell us a little bit about their projects, their applications, and hopefully inspire your cities. So we have a great lineup of speakers. We want this to be a really interactive session. So please, please, please share your questions in the chat, your insights, what your city is doing, where you are on the road to a Vision Zero and a comprehensive safety action plan. And with that, I will turn it over to Jeff Price, Transportation Policy Analyst at the U.S. Department of Transportation. Thank you so much for joining us, Jeff.
Oh, thank you so much. It's a real pleasure to be here with you all. I'm about to put in the chat just the caveat that the information I'm providing to you today is coming from the Department of Transportation. A lot of it is based on our FY23 Notice of Funding Opportunity, which did come out in the last round. Everything is subject to change based on the final determinations, but I'm not going to bury the lead. The exciting news is that a Notice of Funding Opportunity is anticipated to come out next month, which is why this is such a timely conversation. I've got 10 minutes, and then we've got time for conversation and or questions from you, and I'm very excited to go through that. And we can go to the next slide. We do have a fantastic Safe Streets and Roads for All website, which really adds a lot of flavor to what I'll be discussing very quickly today. So I just want to make sure that you have the ability to go to our website. We pride ourselves on putting as much information there as possible, including information on those communities and cities that have been awarded. But Safe Streets and Roads for All is a $1 billion a year investment program for safety to prevent deaths and serious injuries on our roadways. And it really is to focus on our comprehensive action planning, and then also implementation projects. And this is also a key program supporting another major initiative for the Department of Transportation, and our growing list of partners is the National Roadway Safety Strategy. We recognize that we have a Vision Zero that we're adopting at the national level because it's come up from a lot of your communities, and it's a really important focus of a lot of our work. Next slide, please. So really quick, this program is different because of the program eligibility. This is not going through the typical federal fund programming, going through the state DOTs. The eligible recipients are political subdivisions of a state, including metropolitan planning organizations, federally recognized tribes, but really towns, cities, and counties. So this is a huge opportunity for communities to directly get federal support for their safety programs. That we're going to be talking a lot about eligible activities, but basically the development of a comprehensive safety action plan, planning, design, and development of activities for projects and strategies. And we'll talk a lot about that because that's where there's some really excellent opportunity. And then implementing these projects and strategies, what I call construction funds, but what we're calling for today's conversation, implementation plans. Okay. Next slide. Thank you. So here's again, our three major activities under the planning and demonstration grants. There's our action plan, which again is maybe your first step. I think something even more exciting that we're going to talk about is supplemental planning, which could be topical safety plans, or maybe you don't have enough data information, or your existing action plan is out of date and you're looking to collect supplemental data or new data. And then the third bucket, which is my favorite, demonstration activities. This is a really exciting new category, sort of like COVID really helped us understand that cities are really resilient and can adapt, and they can do things like close sections of Main Street to have cafe seating or pedestrian streets or what have you. So there's really a new exciting opportunity here with this grant to do some of those demonstration activities. And we'll talk about some of that in a minute. Next slide. We're going quickly because we want to get to your questions. So implementation grants are really those construction funds, and those are really your meat and potatoes of projects where you're actually ready to make digging into the ground and building projects. Now, these would be identified in your action plan. They could be infrastructure, or they could be behavioral or operational safety activities. All of these activities are eligible, and there is a lot of flexibility in this program. Implementation applications may also include supplemental planning activities and demonstration activities. So it's not an either or in terms of applying for Safe Streets and Roads for All. You can look for construction funding or implementation grants, but then also do some planning as well in conjunction. All right, next slide. So let's talk about what happened in terms of the awards in the last cycle. So we gave out, of the $1 billion that was available in the FY23 pot of money, we gave out $900 million in funding. That impacted over 600 communities at the regional, local, and tribal level. And then overall in that calendar year, we had 2 of our fundings, and we really had an amazing year. That was because the first round took some time to get up to speed. And now here we are already in the third round conversation. But one of the talking points was awards made to date were going to improve roadway safety and planning for around 70% of the nation's population. And with this third round coming up, I'd really like to boost that number to really have on what you see on the map, to really have most of the population covered with this kind of planning, demonstration, and implementation. It's a real huge opportunity. We've got 3 more rounds to go, which is $3 billion plus to go. All right, next slide. So this particular slide is previously awarded projects, but we're looking at the safe system approach, which can be safe for roads, safe for users. But in this case, we're looking at it for post-crash care. There was a question about, are some of the communities applying for things that aren't the traditional ones? And so there's some examples here of a fire protection district going to do some funding for a comprehensive safety action plan, or the city of Burlington received over $1 million in federal funds for a number of activities to include and establish a framework for future deployment of signal priority and signal preemption, really allowing for those EMS vehicles to move through their city. So this is just a few examples from our existing awardees of thinking about things beyond the roadway network that really are going to help with our response to accidents, crashes, etc. So there's lots of creativity with the project thinking out there, and we really want you to sort of engage all the levels of your resources at the city level to think about how you can really solve the safety problems. Okay, next slide, please. So how do we get involved? Just to recap, you could develop an action plan. Does your area already have an action plan? You might have one. We've been working and reaching out with the first round of folks who received an action plan or received a grant to do an action plan, and they're already thinking about some supplemental planning and some demonstration projects. And that leads us to number 2. Our demonstration activities and supplemental planning is a really great opportunity for you to think about a safety problem, try out a demonstration in your community, something that can work, whether it's a road diet or something of that nature, or maybe information, and really trying some things out to inform your ultimate action plan. And then, of course, there's the implementing of projects. And these do have to be established in your approved action plan, but they can be anything from improving an intersection to anything under the umbrella, which we discussed. And that is what is very, very competitive for this project. We usually get 3 to 4 times the request for the funds which we can give out, and we can only give out $600 million per year. So let's go to the next slide. Please, thank you, Paige. So an action plan, as we've discussed, looking at the safety needs of your community. It is not a burdensome application process, and we'll get into that. Very simply, it is a couple of pages of a narrative. On the other hand, these are federal grants, and there is a process. The Notice of Funding Opportunity lays these things out. We've been trying to write these Notice of Funding Opportunities so that you don't need to hire consultants. But I think there's a lot of different approaches to applying for these grants. The likelihood of getting funded for planning is very high. if you put in a complete application, you're extremely likely to get some funding. As I mentioned in the prior slide, for the implementation grants, those are more competitive. And the last question, I'm concerned about non-federal matching fund requirements. We have a whole section on our website about matching funds and some strategies. I think the story is there's lots of flexibility. You can include staff time for matching funds. You can use other safety activities in your community for matching funds. The devil's in the details, but we have some good information on that. And they will be in the NOFO and then some upcoming webinars as well. So hopefully that's piqued your interest. If you're a community that hasn't started on your action plan, we'd love you to join. Next slide. Okay, so planning and demonstration grant selection criteria. I'm going to go over this very quickly. We do have safety impact criteria. We're also looking at equity and additional safety context. It's all in the notice of funding opportunity, but basically we're really looking to hear about your safety story and that you're addressing known safety problems. I could go into this more, but I think we can answer any questions. So we'll go to the next slide. I'm looking at the time. In terms of your planning and demonstration grant narratives, I mentioned maximum 2 pages. We really are looking for your scope of work of what you're trying to perform and how these roadway safety issues necessitate activities, and how the funded activities that you're proposing in your application will inform ultimately the action plan. And then for demonstration activities, talking about the potential benefits, and then it's kind of an idea of the schedule of when you might implement demonstration activities and then sort of evaluate them. Again, back to informing your action plan, which will then help you with justifying improvements in your community for safety projects. Next slide. So supplemental planning and demonstration activities. Again, this is where the opportunity is. We are under demand for the planning funds. So there are a very high percent chance of getting them. And supplemental planning can really inform your action plan. It can get some new data like I talked about. And the demonstration activities are really interesting in that they can test project approaches in a temporary basis, right? So you can do road safety audits. You can look at doing some road diets with paint, signage, anything that is temporary that can really, explore a concept or explore furthering safety. And it really helps engage the community. So next slide. Again, the final deliverable for both supplemental planning and demonstration activities really is having a public plan that's publicly available that's really going to enhance your action plan and the public can really get behind. And then same thing with demonstration activities. It's doing something on the ground that will really help inform your ultimate action plan and really have the community engaged in your safety activities. Next slide. So finally, the notice of funding opportunity, like I mentioned, anticipating for it to come out in the next several weeks. There's going to be because we've got some carryover funds, over 1.2 billion will be made available for this funding round, and over half is dedicated to the planning and demonstration activities. I've been saying it, I'm going to keep saying it. This is where the opportunity is for your planning applications. And of course, we encourage you to also apply for the other implementation projects. And there'll be additional webinars and post NOFO release. Additional webinars post NOFO will be available to educate you on the very specifics of the NOFO and some of the timing. For instance, last year we had a 90-day window to apply. There'll be some new information that will come out. So now we're ready for the questions on the next slide.
Jeff, thank you so much. This was unbelievably thorough and helpful. And I don't know how you possibly just did this in 10 minutes, but huge kudos. One of the questions we received was from Rebecca Owens, and I just want to shout out Rebecca Owens because Lebanon, New Hampshire has been a really robust participant in our local infrastructure hub boot camp. So go Rebecca. She asked whether you can apply for an action plan and demonstration grant, an action plan, demonstration grant, and supplemental, or I don't have 3 hands, an action grant, action plan, and supplemental grant. So how do you bundle these?
Right, and somewhere in maybe the slides that I covered or ones that I had to delete because of our format today, you can do everything. And so you're not going to be penalized if you go in for implementation funds, construction funds, which are the number, which is 30 million or less, and then do it. Anything additional is possible under supplemental planning and demonstrations. In fact, we would recommend that you apply for both, just because we know, as I've said several times now, the planning funds aren't as competitive, and you're very likely to get funding for that as long as you have a good application. So it's really about what's the capacity of your community and what your safety goals are. Maybe you're not ready to do full implementation, but you do have an action plan started or completed, and you want to really look at some particular areas. We typically do talk about like safer roads in some of our strategies. So maybe it's some treatments on your pavement with bollards and paint, or something of that nature that you want to try out as a demonstration project or a quick build, and you could apply for that in your planning. Or you could do that with a full implementation process. I think the one thing that really makes sense, my peanut butter and chocolate example for those who aren't allergic to one or both, is if you're going to do some demonstration projects, you might also want to apply for supplemental planning just to make sure you have enough funding or capacity to then update your action plan, right? So that's a nice idea as well, and those would both be under the planning realm. So you can really choose your own adventure, Rebecca Owens, and but it is, understanding your capacity and your safety need. You can really basically do anything you want. Now they are going to be evaluated separately, but put them in the same application and not separate applications.
We got another question about whether there's reduced match requirements for communities that are designated as historically disadvantaged or in areas of persistent poverty.
So there is potential for tribal funds to be used, TPP, and we'll put that in the notice of funding opportunity. I do not know the answer to the question, but I think we'll make sure to note that in the notice of funding opportunity. My understanding is that there is not, that it is an 80-20 requirement, and that we really focused on, clarity as to how what really counts as match, because I think it's misunderstood. A lot of communities think, oh, we need to have the cash. So for asking for $1 million, we've got to come up with our 20% of that. But I think there's some staff time, local police who might be doing safety enforcement, other things that can apply to that match. But I'm not aware of any reduced matching at this point, but I've noted it.
And this is probably a question on lots of people's minds. Will Safe Streets and Roads for All be available in 25 and 26?
So yes, and that's part of the good news that we're bringing today. Not only do we encourage you to apply for whatever your community needs, and look forward to this round 3 that's happening with the NOFO coming out next month, and then definitely 25 and 26 under a bill.
Katie Imes asked a question that's near and dear to my heart, whether you have any highly successful rural applicants. And I know you do.
Yes, we do. And I think that's the greatest thing about this program is, as long as your community is able to support a federal application and you have capacity, you can. And we've been doing outreach with a lot of communities, large and small. I think one of the interesting things is we're focusing on now is sort of matching where the fatalities are with, what communities are applying. And there's definitely some holes in certain states, in certain regions, the Southeast, for instance. We'd love more communities from the Southeast to apply. And again, it's open. We want to keep encouraging people to apply. We have specific examples on our website. But tribes, counties, small towns, if you've got a safety issue, these funds are eligible for you, and it's a discretionary program. And most importantly, as we said before, bearing the lead, it's not a state DOT program, so you can apply directly. I do think, though, that there is always recognition of where your safety issues are, especially for speaking about the roadway example. We do have state roads, state-controlled roads, and that it does require a partnership. So if you are applying, it's important to understand that if you're proposing some things on state facilities, that you're going to be working with your local state DOT regional office on solutions. So that's a reality of the road network.
And I
Go ahead.
just want to plug, we have one of our very successful Southeast applicants in Clarkston, Georgia, who's going to, Mayor Burke's going to be talking to us about her Safe Streets and Roads for All program. So all stay tuned for that part. Last question from Mayor Mern of Findlay, Ohio. She's just asking, one, about that timeline from application to notice of award and then project completion, and then whether the U.S. routes get any preference. I'm going to put those into two.
Right.
Last question.
Sure. Thank you so much for all your thoughtful questions. And sorry, I didn't have all the answers. We will get a list that I can add of the smaller rural communities together as well. So U.S. routes do not get preference. I think it's really about safety. And in one of the criteria slides that I kind of whizzed through, we are looking at the crash rates and the fatality rates. We're trying to really solve, fatalities and be a Vision Zero, DOT to support that. In terms of the timeline for application, so again, it'll be clear in the notice of funding opportunity. In the past, it's been 90 days once the NOFO is released. I think there'll be some changes to anticipate, and then there'll be evaluation and then awards, and then you go through the process of post-award, which is signing the grant agreement and then getting started. An interesting observation is that some of those communities that were awarded in FY22 are our first round to do planning grants. They are, in some cases, already started and have been working for several months. In other cases, they're really just getting started. And that's okay too. That's the nature of some of the federal support, is that sometimes it does take time. But for instance, if you're a community that did receive a planning grant, you can also apply for supplemental planning or demonstrations or any other planning. So there's lots of flexibility with this grant program.
Well, thank you so much, Jeff. I know there are more questions in the chat, so I might ask if you wouldn't mind just looking at the chat and putting where you are able to, if the some responses to some of those maybe a little easier questions. But we're gonna turn now. The first thing I want to just quickly promote to everybody is a reminder that we are in active registration for our boot camps. These are technical assistance grant application boot camps, where we help you sort of soup to nuts through what you need to make your grant competitive. And I just want to note a few things. One is that Safe Streets and Roads for All is one of the grant programs that we're supporting this cycle. And we're running a full boot camp for that for all of you who've never applied for a Safe Streets and Roads for All program before. But if you've applied before and you were unfortunately unsuccessful, we have targeted assistance where we can, after you get your feedback session with the Department of Transportation, work on the specific areas that they highlighted that were less competitive in your application or needed bolstering. And so just really want to encourage all cities under communities under 150,000. So please register to get support. We have technical experts who are ready to help guide you here. If you have any questions, you can go to our program page and we have ways to get in touch. And the boot camps kick off next week. So I encourage you to register ASAP. You can scan the QR code or click the link, which I'll put into the chat. And now I'd like to introduce Ryan Russo, who is a principal at Together Projects, and as I said, an expert in our Safe Streets and Roads for All bootcamp, and has worked in transportation both in New York City and in Oakland. So he feels all of your transportation folks on the line, and I will toss it over to Ryan. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. I'm really excited to be here today and to again be subject matter expert for those local infrastructure hub boot camps. So just to an additional plug, please sign up if you're under 150,000. It's been great, and we really enjoy helping these communities get that federal dollars that are out there. And again, yes, we're training you how to apply for that money, but you really heard from Jeff that we're kind of teaching you how to fish into a barrel stocked with fish, because there's $1 billion per year of funding, and the US DOT has given out $800 million in the first year and 895. So they're not giving out all the money they have. So the money is there, and we really want to help you get it. So here we have today with us, the mayors of 3 cities who have gotten those funds, and we're really excited to learn from them today. And it's such a great representation of communities. We've got Dearborn, Michigan, 108,000 residents in the Detroit area that received $24.8 million for implementation. We've got Clarkston, Georgia, about 15,000 people, which received $1 million, the largest grant in the state of Georgia for planning and demonstration. And then Arlington, Texas here, 382,000 residents. They've gone to the well twice. They've won for their action plan in the FY22 NOFO, and for supplemental activities in the FY23 NOFO. So really great group here. Welcome, Mayor Burks, Mayor Hammoud, Mayor Ross. Really excited to have you here. So if we could just start, just tell us as we go around 2 things: why you sought the funds from Safe Streets and Roads for All, and how your city will use the funds from your Safe Streets and Roads for All grant. And let's start with our smallest city, Mayor Beverly Burks from Clarkston, Georgia.
Thank you so much, and thank you. Small but mighty, 1 million, and that's the lesson that I hope everyone has the opportunity to take from this. It doesn't matter the size of the city; it's making sure that you have a quality grant to present, and that's what we did. When you think about Clarkston, Clarkston is the most diverse city, probably per square mile. We're only 1.8 square miles with 15,000 people, but we have people who speak over 70 different languages. And that poses a challenge. And with the grant, what we were able to do is demonstrate where we were having issues of fatalities and injuries within our community. And so we have, along our corridor, we have many of our residents who, because they are refugees or are unable to drive, many of them walk. And with that, we've encountered a lot of issues with fatalities and injuries. So with this grant, we're going to do implementation. We're going to look at it holistically throughout the city in terms of how we can make the necessary improvements. But we're also looking at our North Indian Creek corridor, where many of our schools are located. Actually, we have a deaf school, an elementary school, and as you go towards the city-county line, we have 2 universities along the way and a high school. So you have a lot of pedestrians walking to and from for school. So with this grant, what we're doing is we're looking at taking the numbers, making sure in terms of equity and everything else related to that, that we have a strong, robust plan. We're going to do a partnership with the county because, as we mentioned, part of our road is in terms of Indian Creek, where we have high pedestrian, is along the county city line. And so with this grant, we did a partnership with the county to ensure that as we're doing these types of implementation, planning for it, we're thinking holistically. So we're doing the partnership with the county. We're looking at our city as its entirety, but we're going to make sure in terms of having things like HAWK systems in place to make sure we have the flashing lights, because again, we're dealing with language issues with our community. So we have to have those safety measures in place that if English is your second language, we have those things in place that you understand what you have to do to safely walk within the community. And so from that perspective, we're thinking out of the box in terms of our engagement, because again, we're going to have to educate our community about this in terms of the actual action plan. And then we'll follow up in terms of the DOT, meeting with the cities, and then going through in terms of stakeholders and creating that scope of work that we can proceed and apply for that additional funding that you talked. So those are some of the things that we're doing.
Great. Thank you so much. Why don't we jump to the north to Dearborn to Mayor Hammoud and tell us about that $24.8 million and how you're going to use that in your community.
Thank you so much for having me on. And I know my philanthropy and grants director, Nicole Hefty, is also on, who knows the specifics. But also, so you guys know, Jim Ross is a Dearbornite. So you're actually from Dearborn, born and raised. And so, I think there's something to say about if you're from Dearborn, you got a 66% odds of being on a panel to talk about a Safe Streets for All grant. We actually applied first to the RISE grant and were unsuccessful. But what we did then was actually sit down with the Department of Transportation to talk about what was wrong in our application and what was missing. And it was really, more research and really the power of a story of what we're trying to accomplish, and also understanding what's appropriate for RISE versus what's appropriate for Safe Streets for All, because there is some overlap. And so we applied for the second time for Safe Streets for All. And Warren Avenue is actually a county road. It's a 2-mile stretch. And it's actually the center for Arab American businesses, probably the Arab American business capital of the country. More Arab American businesses per capita than any other region in the whole country. And so for us, we had a multitude of things we wanted to tackle: become an economic engine, slow down traffic, make it more pedestrian friendly, because we had a number of pedestrian deaths along this 2-mile stretch. In fact, we shared the story also. Our Congresswoman, Rashida Tlaib, her uncle was unfortunately hit by a vehicle last year and passed away. And so we made sure that we told the story of how this road was impacting those closest to us and across the community. And that packet ultimately was successful. The application was successful. And so we're extremely excited because by the time we finish, Warren Avenue stretches through Detroit. We'll be joining with Mayor Mike Duggan to brand this whole corridor as an Arab American business corridor more formally. And unveil hopefully new streetscape, new sidewalks, new streetlights, to be highly more efficient, bring down those civilian casualties, and works towards a vision zero that we can all be proud of. And so extremely excited and thrilled and thankful to DOT. Thankful to Nicole Hefty, our philanthropy and grants manager. And so thanks for having us. And to obviously Bloomberg and the infrastructure hub. I think Nicole signed up to go to the infrastructure hub once and then used my name to sign up a second time and go through it a second time. So that's another loophole for anybody who wants to go through it a few times. Just keep using everybody's name.
I love it. I love it. Thank you, Mayor. So let's jump to the south, over to Texas, to Arlington, and Mayor Ross, tell us about your community and the goals you have, why you sought the funds and why you've gone twice. And I think you're planning to even go a third time in the next NOFO.
We are. I can tell you a little bit about the community by simply saying World Series champion Texas Rangers. Okay. That's where we're at with everything. Listen, I agree with everything Jeff said earlier. This is like fishing in a barrel. And it's some low-hanging fruit that is easy to get into. I would also recommend that if you haven't developed an action plan, that the first thing you do is start looking at how do you go about doing such. In 2022, we did a comprehensive roadway safety action plan. That's where we got our first monies from. That is the least competitive route to take. Very beneficial and helping us identify what areas of concern that we needed to. We were able to bring in a consulting team as a result of that award. Last year, we worked on a couple of different things: our ADA transition plan and a sidewalk master plan to help get us to the Vision Zero standard that we wanted on our city. This is stuff that if you don't ask for the money, somebody else is. And you've got to be willing to just take the time, ask for the money, get some help to get the things needed for your city. This is literally fishing in a barrel. It's that simple. Also with me today is Ann Foss, who is our planning and programming manager, and she's here to help answer any questions as well.
Yeah, I would like to invite, I think Mayor Ross and Mayor Hammoud brought team members of yours. I would like to invite them to join us in the discussion, because we do have representatives from cities, around the country, and sometimes the more technical grant people who are looking for some of these questions. So why don't we start with you? And so we've heard you got the FY22 for the overall action plan, which is underway and in development. You've got the supplemental activities for the demonstration supplemental activities for the FY23 grant, and then you're looking, can you tell us more about what you're anticipating? Because we are, I do want to highlight before you start that these demonstration activities, what you heard from Jeff, is that they qualify as planning, and this is the money that they basically have more money to give out than they have applicants. And so these pop-ups that you can do on your street, these demonstration activities are the things, there's a lot of availability, and you can have a really quick impact on safety and learn before you go and build your capital project. So Anne, if you could tell us more about some of the details of the plans in Arlington, I think that would help our participants.
Sure. Yes, our comprehensive safety action plan is underway. That was funded through the first round. We did go through an RFQ process. We hired a consultant team to help us work on this plan. And it does take a little bit of time to get going. People are asking about the timeline questions. By the time you do get through the grant execution process, hire a consultant team if that's what you're going to do. It does take some time. So we're kicking off our safety action plan kind of externally to the community over the next couple of months. And so we'll be holding some community meetings, doing some surveying, getting input from the community. And we're hoping that the timing works out really well to gather that information and fold it into our next application for SS4A, focused on a demonstration project. So identify some areas that are of community concern and some safety improvements that they're interested in seeing, and use that information to craft our demonstration project idea. And then the other benefit of that is that I think based on our experience with the timing, we'll be wrapping up our safety action plan at about the same time that we'll have access to the demonstration project funding if we are awarded in the next round. So we'll be able to really maintain the momentum coming out of adopting the plan and then starting to see some impacts from that on the ground for the community.
That's really fantastic. And Nicole, could you tell us, tell us a little bit more about the Warren Warren Avenue corridor. Are there any intent to do any early action items? Because it's a major reconstruction for the corridor and quite a grand vision of raised protected bike lanes and removal of a travel lane in each direction. Could you tell us more about the work there?
Sure, absolutely. We are really lucky in Dearborn to have some really talented staff members, one of which is our Director of Economic Development, and he actually has a lot of experience with projects like this. And so, we've already gathered the team and started talking through what that will look like with community engagement, with engaging our businesses. Mayor Hammoud had this great vision of having business liaisons in all of our business districts. So they are going to be reaching out and chatting with our businesses to make sure that, they are aware of every step of our plans going forward.
Great. And I do want to jump back to small but mighty Clarkston and Mayor Burks. You talked about a bit in your first answer, but we really want to tease out this idea of partnership. You heard, Dearborn worked closely with their council, their county, and the Congress member. Could you talk about how you managed in such a small city the application process, any support you received in partnership, and any role that maybe the National League of Cities and the Local Infrastructure Hub played in helping you get to where you are now?
All the above. How about that? That's the short answer. We were grateful because, again, we are a small city, but we are a significant hub when you think about our international community. We have a great relationship with the county because part of the street that we're really looking at making a lot of the pedestrian improvements this is along the city county line. So we had a great partnership with our county. We were able to go through the infrastructure hub and get the additional training that helped our grant and engineering team that put the actual planning action plan together. So we were lucky to be able to enhance the information that we have already through leveraging the information we received through the infrastructure hub to make sure that we had a clear and robust application to present. And so working with our community, to provide us with the additional letters that we needed of support. All of those things were critical to show that this was not just a simple plan of the city wanting to do it. It was looking at the entire community's interest in making overall improvements that not only helped our city, but it helped the county along with our unique population. So Bloomberg, thank you for allowing us to have the opportunity to showcase this, because one of the most important things that I hope as a small city is that you understand that doesn't change your opportunity to make infrastructure changes for your community. In fact, if you have a compelling story, leverage that story. We had on this particular road that we're looking at making some of the improvements, we had a student to pass away from a hit and run. And so she was a refugee child. And so understanding why making these type of infrastructure changes so critical in your particular community and showing the reason why it's so critical helps to make that compelling story that lets you have the opportunity to get access to the funds.
Fantastic. So you actually started doing the next thing I wanted to do. I'm gonna ask for any volunteers on the panel to just give tips or guidance you have for communities going through their first SS4A application. Who wants to raise their hand? I mean, we've been hearing those, but yeah.
I think like the first piece I'll say is don't be shy as it pertains to the research and information you're putting in your application. There's no such thing as too much when it comes down to this application. I know that was a lesson that was learned from us on our first round, and we certainly weren't shy in the second round for Safe Streets for All. But I think that's like the immediate tip. Put everything you can and really create a narrative and story for what you're trying to do.
I'll add on to that a little bit. Don't be afraid to ask others for help and collaborate. We engaged in our local university here, University of Texas at Arlington. I have a coalition for people with disabilities. We engaged with them and looking at our master plan on the sidewalk development. Be collaborative in your attempts and go to people who've already done this. Don't try to reinvent the wheel on your own. That's one of the great things about mayors is we can pick up the phone and call each other and say, hey, what about this? Have y'all done this before? Engage in your community. Don't leave the community out. Nobody likes for the city or local government to come in and say, here's what we're going to do for you guys. Engage in them. Let this be a part of their decision-making process and let them come up with some of these ideas. And to reiterate on what Mayor Hammoud said, data. You can't have enough data in there. Make sure that you're giving all the reasons why you should be awarded that money and utilize the data available to you.
Yeah. And even to that point, one of the good things where we're located, we have access to the Atlanta Regional Commission. So especially when you're looking at data, leverage those partnerships, leverage those universities that can give you that robust data. Where we're located, we have access to bike trail. We have the CSX railroad going through our city. So as you're looking at all the improvements, look at holistically the access points throughout your city to make sure that you're covering those places where you need to ensure pedestrian safety, as well as when you're looking at maybe bicycles. And all of those things need to be included as you're putting together the why. The why is making sure that you provide safety for everyone, whether it's making sure from an ADA, whether it's the bikes, whether it's just simply walking. All those are the whys in terms of the importance of having this plan.
That's really, really great advice. I love the pairing of the story and the why and the data, kind of put it together. It's another chocolate and peanut butter if we're going to keep going with our Reese's peanut butter cup analogy. Mayor Hammoud, did you?
Ryan, I was going to say, I think the successful applications are also made available. And so if you want to know, if you want to read a successful application, DOT makes it publicly available, so you can just look and see how people submitted their applications.
Yeah.
And I think that's just another helpful. Sometimes just having a cheat sheet to look at is great.
Yeah. The US DOT website on this program is really fantastic. So I'm going to ask Jamie to comb through the chat to see if we have a couple of questions that we've received. In the meantime, I'm going to stall for her 1 minute while I mention that, again, with these demonstration activities that you can do, your chief engineer or public works director might be nervous about these pop-up activities, but I want to highlight that the most recent version of the MUTCD has sort of broadened the creativity that we can bring to our streets and is more and more accepting of these fast actions that can calm traffic and bring livability. I'm going to share a link. There was just an opinion piece in the Washington Post talking about how painted neck downs and intersections have been studied, and they reduce rates of collision, and talking specifically about how the federal government is starting to permit what was a debatable permission in the manual for uniform traffic control devices, which kind of governs our streets and roads. So I would encourage people to take a look at that if they haven't. So Jamie, if you don't mind, maybe if there's a question we want to get from the panel, from the participants.
Yeah, so one of the things, Ryan, I think that would be helpful, maybe if you want to just talk a little bit too, and talk maybe to some of the panelists about, we heard from Jeff that implementation grants are highly, highly, highly competitive. Yeah. Congratulations to Mayor Hammoud for getting one of those highly competitive grants. If cities are not successful in getting implementation grants and they've gotten the plan and they've done the demonstration activities, what's their next avenue for funding?
Yeah, and I mean, to me, there's really no limit to the cycle of demonstration activities. I mean, really, if you look at the way they're funding it and defining it, you might do your plan, which might call for crossing improvements at locations that your data analysis said, throughout your city. And those crossing improvements, like Mayor Burks said, could be, it could be a rectangular rapid flashing beacon, like bright yellow signs with flashing lights that they push that are solar powered. Your demonstration activities could likely be a citywide program of implementing your flashing beacons, because that's not a civil engineering project that needs the implementation grant. So there's almost this kind of unlimited pool of kind of going back to the well. So to almost think of demonstration, when you hear demonstration, almost think of the word implementation. Yeah, it might not be the big streetscape project, the $25 million downtown reconstruction that you're dreaming of. And that those are going to be competitive. But I think this program, we want to sort of almost put the word planning out of our head, because people hear planning and they think, I've already do enough planning in my community. There's so much planning. I'm a mayor. I've got to do action. So there's really money there for that. It's called demonstration, but it's lowercase I implementation in this case. And sorry if I hogged that, but and anybody else from the cities want to jump in on that one? Great. So any other questions that we want to highlight, Jamie?
Did any of these cities build bikes or other micromobility into their plans or into their applications? How are you thinking about bikeways or other micromobility options?
I'll throw that to maybe Dearborn, to Nicole or Mayor Hammoud.
So our application had bike pathways, and since we submitted the application with our original thought process for the final design, we've seen a development that happened on Warren Avenue, this road that we're constructing in Detroit, plus saw some amazing developments happen across the country. And so we're hoping that we can try to take some of the best practices. Traditionally you see bike pathways in the actual street that are protected, but then if you look to like Berlin and Germany and some of the other things, we've seeing emerging across the country, some protected bike pathways, pedestrian pathways on actual sidewalks might make more sense in certain roadways. And so we're taking some of that feedback, but we're definitely including this in Emerge Thoroughfare. And some of the pushback I get is like people aren't riding a bike in Michigan right now for you to be spending so much money for just 3 months out of the year where somebody might ride a bike. And our answer is always, we're building infrastructure for tomorrow. You know, we can't tell you what the main means of mobility might be today or next month. But you know, years from now, I bet you that public transit will be far more common. This idea in Michigan, where everybody has a car, everybody is driving, will certainly change with time.
Right. And where we are in Clarkston, we have part of the Stone Mountain bike path that runs through our city that goes all the way from Stone Mountain to Atlanta. And so we already have throughout parts of our city, bike paths, bike lanes. So we're also making sure in terms of our plan that we look at how we can enhance those areas as well to make sure that it's safe for our cyclists to be able to utilize it. We see many people who are in wheelchairs, motorized wheelchairs, who use those bike lanes. And so as we're doing our plan, we're making sure that we think about those things in terms of accessibility for them as well.
That's great. So we've had, you know, a city that's, you know, in the Detroit locus, the capital of the Motor City, say they're putting the bike lanes in, and in the Atlanta region, which is, you know, known for kind of its auto dependence. So let's also hear from Arlington about its sort of support of pedestrian and biking as a means of transportation, and in how it's doing its safety planning.
I hate to jump on anything you have going on, Anne, because I saw you nodding your head on this. So I'll let you take that out. I will say that we are looking at not just bike paths, but increased access to micromobility with scooters and little EV bikes, I guess, so to speak, in different parts of Arlington as well as a part of this. So.
Yeah, I'll just add, you know, Texas tends to be pretty car-centric as well, as some of the other communities on the panel. But we are seeing increased interest in, like Mayor Ross said, micromobility of all sorts, e-bikes, e-scooters, as well as traditional bikes and pedestrian activity, especially working with our partner, the university. They have lots of students who walk and bike around and scoot. So we're very much taking a holistic approach with our safety action plan and considering all roadway users, especially those more vulnerable roadway users on feet and bike and wheels. So interested in seeing how we can incorporate those improvements as we develop the plan and move into the demonstration projects.
And maybe the last question we had gotten from Patrick Farrich, sorry if I mispronounced that. And it was a topic that we heard come up a lot at the U.S. Conference of Mayors Winter Meeting, the idea of leveraging public-private partnerships. The question was about using the funds with public-private partnerships to incentivize developers to install safe amenities in their developments that otherwise wouldn't be installed. Wondering, even if it wasn't included in your application, is that something any of the cities are considering or working with private developers on making their developments safer for pedestrians, cyclists, and others?
So for our application, you know, we got roughly 25 million. We had a match in there of roughly 5 million, which the county is actually putting up because they had planned for resurfacing of this road. So we just kind of timed the application appropriately. But then we as a city are also putting a few extra million in CDBG dollars. And what we're going to do is we're going to try to incentivize the right developments for these private businesses along all of Warren Avenue with the CDBG dollars. So we're going to give we're going to do a 2-to-1 match. And so basically, if they're willing to put up, you know, $5,000, we'd give them 10,000 to make the investments on the facade from the outside perspective to help make it more walkable, more friendly for pedestrian walkways, but also to improve the facade. You're spending this much money on the roads and the sidewalks. You also want the businesses to look great too. And so that's one of the investments that we're doing from a private perspective.
can tell you in Arlington and different parts of the city, our downtown district and our entertainment district, we just started in downtown a public-private partnership where we're working with the Downtown Arlington Association, who is providing a courtesy patrol, so to speak, where we have courtesy individuals that will walk around, help ensure that the area stays clean, stays safe, that is reporting dangerous things to the police department, things such as that. So you don't have a uniform presence there, but you have like a police presence. You do have courtesy officers there who are there to help give direction, who help report matters of safety, matters of concern to the right authorities, and who help notify the city if there are infrastructure problems that we need to address. So I'm excited to see that's a newly implemented program. I'm excited to see how that private public partnership is going to work out together.
Fantastic. So in terms of our panel, we are at time. I'll pass it back to Jamie, but just in conclusion, I want to thank everyone for your participation and sharing such incredible nuggets of wisdom, and just again encourage everyone to consider applying for these funds. Again, planning might not seem the most exciting, but it offers the opportunity to really change your streets, to slow traffic, to make them safe, to prevent serious deaths and injuries with the demonstration activities that are outlined. And also the planning activities could give you access to other sources of funds, whether that's at your county, region, or state level. And I've seen that before. There could be state grants for bike and pedestrian activities that this planning really gets you ready for. So excited. So definitely strongly encourage you to get in line for one of those fish that are just sitting in the barrel.
Thank you so much, Ryan. And thank you to all of our participants for the really great discussion today. And thank you for everybody for all of your questions. I love when I'm not talking to myself in the chat. We're going to ask you for two quick things. One is Paige is going to put up a poll. If you could all just fill it out quickly, it will help inform our programming that we deliver to you. And so while you're filling it out, I'm also going to promote our next webinar, which is tomorrow. And it is on, it's a tech and innovation session, and it's on the role of technology pilots in federal infrastructure funding. We're going to hear from Long Beach, California, and the Port Authority of New York, New Jersey about how they've been using some of the pilots to generate data to be able to then feed into a federal funding application, or to be able to focus on where you might want to, focus your resources in federal infrastructure funding. So highly recommend, sharing that, especially if you have people in your city that are focused on innovation or technology. We know that cities don't always have the easiest procurement systems for doing technology pilots, so they'll share some tricks of the trade. Please be sure to check out the calendar and resources on our website, localinfrastructure.org, that I put in the chat a few times. We'll have the recording from today's session, a summary, all the slides up there in just a couple of days. I also wanted to say a huge thank you to Jeff Price for not only his fantastic presentation, but answering so many of the questions in the chat. Thank you, Jeff. And just want to say thank you to Secretary Buttigieg and the entire team at the Department of Transportation. I don't know if you all feel it the way I do, but we have real partners in Washington who want to help cities, who want to make your community safer. And so thank you for your partnership. Please register for the boot camps if you're eligible. Any questions, reach out to me with any of those. And thank you again to all of our city leaders who are focusing on road safety. And with that, we'll sign off. Thanks.